Welcome to Doc NYC. I'm the festival's director of programming, Basil Siokos, and I'm happy to have a number of people from the Mole Agent join me today for this Q&A. We have director Maite Alberdi, as well as executive producers Julie Goldman, Christopher Clements, and Carolyn Hepburn from Motto Pictures. Thank you so much for being part of Doc NYC, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
So I'm going to begin with Maite. One of your previous very successful films internationally filmed was Tea Time, which is a beautiful portrait of your grandmother and a group of female friends. Did that project influence The Mole Agent? You focus on older people in this film as well, and they're often a very overlooked documentary subject. So can you talk a little bit about sort of what draws you to maybe an overlooked and an older subject base?
Yeah, I don't know if Tea Time influenced directly, but it's a topic that it's my area of interest because I think that I cannot speak about old age in general. It's like each person is a world, and I think that I can make 20 different films about old age, and I can continue shooting the same topic, and I want to, because each person is a different story. And for my way to shoot, I really like to work with old people, because for me it's like to work with children, that it's more difficult because of the authorization of the parents. But one of the characters of Tea Time said, between an old woman of 80 years old and 81 years old in 1 year, there is a world of change. As in a baby of 1 year and 2 years, you really see change. So it's an age that you can develop a story of changes. And as I work with action and with image, and in my observation, I never make interviews, for me are kind of characters that really give me narrative options, and they are really leading with different talents. So it's an age that I cannot make only one statement, because there are different things that they are living, and at the same time I can see it in concrete scenes and action what they are living in that change.
And so I understand that the film The Mole Agent, it wasn't originally your plan to make this film specifically. Like the film developed obviously over time, and as you met the characters and all that. What was the original film that you were trying? What did you think you were going to make when you first started?
Yeah, I don't know if it was completely different, but was more focused on the detective case. And for me, I wanted to make a film noir about a private detective and a mole, and what that case developed. And I work as an assistant of Romulo to understand that world for a while. And Sergio was not my main character. He usually worked with an old mole, but he broke his hip before he started shooting. So when I make the research with the previous mole, I really knew what I wanted to shoot and how the case usually worked and how he worked, more with a detective mind. But Sergio arrives and he didn't have the detective mind. He was an old person that wanted to have a job, and at the end, yeah, he was the worst spy of the world. I always say that, but he was the best character for me because he really lived that place, and he was open to live new experience with that character. So he changed the focus of my development script that was completely on the client, on the case, on the clues to resolve this case. And the case now, it's only an excuse to know this world and to understand how the people are living in that specific place.
And I don't want to blow the original mole's idea or anything, but what was that person like? I mean, was he more serious? Was he more like, obviously he was better at being a mole, let's say, but the personality, like, was it very, very different from Sergio's?
It was more similar with Romulo in some, like, he was doing a job and he was not going to commit with the people that was there. Like, he wanted to do his job and he did it like super well and super automatically, like he knows what to do. Even if he also has problem with the technology, he was not perfect, and at the same time, he was also concerned about small things like if the lunch is going to be served in the room or in the like kind of things that he wanted to do in some way, but he was completely focused on his job and not in the people. And Sergio, I don't know if now like he's like that, but he was also in that point living a moment of his life when he need an experience. He was recently a widower, so he was looking for something. I don't know if 5 years before or in 2 years more he's going to be in the same mood that he was in that moment, that he was really like open because he was living a difficult period. So that things like mix perfectly for the encounter with the characters.
And I want to turn to Mato, to, let's say, Julie, let's start with. So at what point did you guys come on board? How developed was it? Was Sergio already part of the process, or did you work out the whole casting process? And I know all the casting stuff was actually real. It's not staged or anything like that, but at what point did you guys become involved?
And we knew Maite's previous films and loved Maite's previous films. So we would all, kind of had a professional crush on her and wanted to work together. And we met all with Maite and Marcela, her producer, at TFI All Access when they were up here for Tribeca. And I'm trying to remember what stage it was in.
It was a concept.
Yeah.
It really, you kind of
you knew what you were thinking, but it wasn't yet.
We had no idea of the character
yet, and
no, we had a teaser, but with the other
exactly,
yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, when you were like, okay, and then you're telling us that like he's going to he's going to cast a new mole now, and he's gonna have job interviews, and when you were doing that, you're like, oh my god, this guy is amazing, but I don't think he's gonna hire him. And he was very specific about what he wanted. And then the other main option, he was like, oh, he's married and his wife's gonna, he's such a like macho guy. He was like, oh, his wife's gonna be a pain in my butt. So because he's a widower. But Maite was like, I think you just like knew right away when you saw him.
Well, we all knew, didn't we? Like
when we saw the casting,
we all were like, what about that guy? When it was just all footage.
In fact, when there was editing going on, you'd see him more, and he so grabs you. Like from the very beginning, we had to diminish him in that sequence because you didn't want to tip it.
Right. And maybe Carolyn, like when you're like, what makes you want to like take on a project, and how do you know how much involvement you're going to have with a particular director in terms of helping to shape, like you said, like you all sort of saw the castings and were like, oh, we like that guy too. I mean, I know Maite really was into that guy, but like, how does Mato know like sort of what to get involved with and how much to be involved?
Well, this was just a great opportunity because Maite was so early in her process. We like to come in at development really and kind of help, we're not just kind of producers that fundraise and do kind of production management. We are also very much creative producers. So we like to work with the creative team in developing the narrative and help decide who's going to be cast and what they're bringing to the story. So it just and like Julie said, we were huge fans of Maite's previous work, and so when we had this opportunity to meet with her and Marcela, and they were so early in their process, and it just kind of felt like this great opportunity, and also we just kind of fell in love with the idea of the story, that she's doing something so different. To do a film noir documentary just kind of helped, inspired us, because we also we want to do lots of different types of stories. We don't want to do kind of the same story over and over again. So just the variety, Maite's concept, kind of her approach and how she was going in, it all just was like exciting and, you know, inspiring, and just made us want to, you know, it was just great. And it was a complicated production as well. You know, there was a lot of co-producers,
Right.
many different territories. And Marcella is a wonderful producer. She's an emerging producer. So it was a very complicated one to kind of take care of as well. So, you know, we stepped in to help Marcella kind of really understand the landscape and position the film the best that it could be, so that, you know, when we premiered at Sundance, you know, we had a great premiere, we had great partners, and you know, it's just been so exciting to see audiences embrace this film throughout the year and be so touched, and, you know, want to get in touch with their parents and their grandparents.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I have a question, just because I think audience members might wonder this as well. Again, like, I know some people have been like, oh, is it partly fictionalized or whatever? And I know it's not, but can you explain, Maite, what the nursing home thought you were doing, like when you were in there filming? Because obviously we have some of the sort of hidden camera stuff that Sergio has, but there's a lot of observational footage. So what did you tell them? How did you get access? All those kinds of basic questions around the premise.
Yeah, for that, Tea Time helps a lot, because Tea Time was a film that has a lot of visibility in Chile, and in the retirement home, they were super big fan of Tea Time. They had seen inside the retirement home. So when I came, first I worked with Romulo and I understand that world. And when I knew the case, I went to the place and by myself. And I say that I wanted to make a film about how the people were living there, about old age in general of this place, like an observational documentary for 3 months. And they were like super happy that we wanted to make a film there. And we explained to all the people that live there and that work there that we are going to shoot everything that happens there, like good things and bad things, like life. And so they allowed us, and we enter like 3 weeks before Sergio enters. So first we shoot all the office and the training, then we enter, and we say to Sergio that he has to act that he don't know each other inside. So, and that was very important for me, like to understand how I had to shoot Sergio in the office, because yeah, we can say like it seems more control, but I never control, like I never say action or nothing, because if I did that with Sergio in that moment, he were going to be used to receive my instructions, and he were going to get confused. And I was someone that I was observing this reality, and I have to do the same inside. So because he's an 83 years old man, I can explain to him how I work, but it was difficult. So I had to train in him, like I am there, but I'm not there, like from the beginning. So when he entered, he acted that he didn't know each other, and the place were already used to us because we were already shooting there. And we said to the owner that in these 3 months, someone new arrives to live. We wanted to focus on this new person, because usually there were people arriving. So when he arrived, she asked to her daughter if we can shoot them, and like everything in a protocolar way. And yeah, that was how.
And so you shot for 3 months. How long was Sergio living there? Like he was there the same amount?
Yeah, like we
more or
shot
less
there like more than 3 months, but he was there like for 3 months.
So it's
They actually
6
split.
months. Yeah.
Yeah, and we split up. We were doing parallel tracks while we were shooting in the home. We were also documenting his learning process to become the mole.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So one thing, I've already mentioned a couple times, but there is such a sort of, you already said that you wanted a film noir kind of feel to the film. Can you talk about how that influenced things like the way you shot it, as well as I'm really curious about the music, because the score is really contributes really nicely to that kind of feel, and it has again very distinctive to most documentaries that you see out there. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the elements that you brought in of that film noir feeling, and how you developed that?
Yeah, we study with the cinematographer like the image reference that we wanted to put of the film noir in the film, like the big contrast, yeah, the kind of lenses that film noir used. So we used that stuff and we put it in the office that we were more controlled because it was a small place, so we can potential that in that place. Our challenge was how to do that in the retirement home when we don't have lights and we cannot control. So our only place that we can really control was in the night when everybody went to sleep. So and Sergio sent his reports, and was the moment that we can put a light and do it more like with a reference with the office. So for me, there is something that it's all the film of the film noir reference, that it's the reports in the image, in the way of film noir, and the music, that it's something that I can put after, and it's really the musician really study like the reference and try to understand how to mix this kind of world with a film noir film. So the code, it's all the time in the music. Yeah, completely.
And were there specific films that you sort of gave the composer to, or the, you know, to reference, or was it just kind of like, here's the general feel?
Super open, but we see a lot of we saw in English Shanghai Lady, Laura Heminger,
Shanghai.
Yeah.
Nora,
yeah.
Great. You know, obviously the film has a light touch in parts, but it is also very bittersweet in others. And as you know, as some, I think Chris said earlier, like, you know, it kind of makes people want to call their mother or grandmother or whatever. Like it has that kind of feeling of wanting to sort of reestablish connection. And the film very much is about sort of like older people in isolation, but needing connection and wanting purpose and all those things. You know, you have a very smart way of approaching. It's a clever way of approaching the story through this kind of lens of kind of a humorous idea, but it does deal with a very serious topic. Can you talk a little bit about sort of finding that balance, particularly in the edit, to sort of balance out the, you know, the sort of humorous as well as the more serious elements? I don't know if Maite wants to cover that, or if Mato wants to address part of that.
Would you start, Maite?
You should start.
Yeah, I want to start. Like the other day, the sound guy that I had been working with him for 10 years, when he saw the film, told me it was a very weird experience because I cried a lot, and in my remember of the shooting, I laughed all day. So it was super difficult to understand how I cry, because I never cry in the shooting. I have a really enjoying shooting days with a lot of humor. So I think that if we like clean the situations, like the script, like the life situations, to make a summary, they are living a painful situation, but the day by day, it's not painful. It's like you can be living a very sad situation, but you can have laugh during the day. Like life is not black and white. And I think that if you see the context that they are living, that it's like in the film, it's terrible, but their life, it's not terrible in the day by day. So I tried to manage that. Like Sergio was someone that was living a personal painful in that moment, but it's, you don't see it because it's internal. So the internal things that appears in some moments are the sadness, but in the relationship, it's not sadness. And taking the Chris thing about call your parents, for me, it's now when I have been showing the film after the pandemic, in January, when we premiere at Sundance, we say like, yeah, call your parents or call your mom. But I think after the lockdown or during the lockdown, everybody tried to call their parents. So for me, now has a different lecture, probably, that when we finish the film, because a lot of people ask me like, how do you see the film now? And for me, it's like that people were living in the same way before the pandemic than during the pandemic, because when I shoot that film in that place, the people were dying alone in the funerals. Nobody arrived to the funerals. And that was the big topic on the pandemic, that the people here were locked down and they cannot went to the funeral of their grandparents or parents that were sick. And that was already happening in that place. And for the owner of the retirement home, she told me like, nothing changed. Like, okay, the people cannot come, but they didn't come before. Now in the pandemic, they realized that they had a rule that they cannot go. So they started to call after 5 years that were they never calling. Like I started to put Zoom, and the people, it's like seeing their grandparents, because they get conscious of the pandemic, of the limitation, like the limit make them conscious of how many times they were not coming to see them. So I think that there was a previous pandemic that was the loneliness that was already there. The pandemic make it conscious to the people of outside about that situation, like how many days have passed without calling, without go. So yeah, the pandemic of the loneliness were there and was sad, even if they were not crying all day. It's like it was a hard situation internal for them. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. I just wanted to say there was a pivotal shift in the edit, as Maite was saying, that she was making a different film. It changed, and it's an example of letting the footage that you gathered lead the way in the story. And for a long time, we were working as a team to figure out how to keep the investigation interesting. And we were like, the investigation is really not interesting, but we kept studying it through the film. And then there was just kind of this freeing moment when Maite and we were sitting, and you just said, this is about the place. It's not about this investigation, even though, and once that happened, the edit really started to flow along. We were able to see the things that really resonated.
Great. Well, we've run out of time. I have so many more questions, but I love this film, and I'm so glad we're able to include it in Doc NYC. I do have to wrap up, but I want to say thank you again to everyone, for Maite and Team Motto, for letting us show the film. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
We're really happy to have it at Doc NYC.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.